I'm in the hope business. Periodically, I have people that come to my classes and they watch the videos, and they also subscribe to the membership and those things. And I just had one this last Saturday because I do a Saturday morning Q&A. That's what I do. As long as I'm
Hmm.
in town and can, I will do that. I do a Wednesday night class also. There was somebody that she had followed me for years when I was only doing live classes, and she stumbled across me on the internet, and she was so glad to come, and she's subscribed and been watching videos and everything, and she was just and she told me, she says, I'm so glad to get back in touch with me. It gives me hope. That's the biggest compliment I can get is hope. So that's what I'm in the business to do.
Right. Okay, so right now, things don't look all that bad right now. So maybe it's like way before the storm starts, but we know it's coming.
Well, I'd use this analogy. I'm standing outside and I can look back behind me, let's say to the east. Most of my storms come from the west, so I look back to the east and it's blue skies, sunny. I look overhead, it's partly cloudy and there's some clouds around here, and I look off to the west and it's black. And that's
Hmm.
it's coming, and you can it's from horizon end to end of the horizon, north to south. It is black, and you can hear the rolling thunder, and you can see off in the distance the rain and the hail, and the trees are starting to end, but it's not here. It's not on you yet. It's coming,
Hmm.
and it may be the perfect storm in this case. It may be an extreme storm. Well, if you take a look at some of the events around us, that there's dozens of things on the horizon. Any one of them we could weather it because we have. But if three, four, or five of those things hit all at the same time, it's really bad. So you look at that list and you say, what about, where's the economy? What's the cost of gasoline? I just saw a prediction that it may go to $15 a gallon here before long. Could do that instantaneously. I hope it doesn't. I fill up my car. It was $70 just to fill it here the other day, and it wasn't all the way empty.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, that's getting expensive. But and that's only at I was paying what is it, $5.29 a gallon, three
Yeah.
times that. $200 to fill my tank. Oh my gosh. Well, it won't drive as much, that's for sure. But so we have the increase in gasoline prices, which means that the food prices are going up, which means that other services are going up. Everybody has to charge more. So we have this inflation going on, partly because of supply, but also because there's more money being pumped into the system because, well, we have to give people their emergency this and that and try to help them. And so, but it hasn't taken off into hyperinflation yet. I hope it doesn't. But if you study what's happened in other countries and what's going on around the world right now in some small countries, it's like, boy, that's devastating. And
Hmm.
whole economies collapse when that occurs. So we could have that happen. Then we throw in some of these shortages of things that are starting. We're not really out yet, but we have the supply chain problem that's adding to it. And then we have there's been an awful lot of food processing plants, some of them burned down, and other things that happen, and just a number of things. And if they all come together just right, then all of a sudden, and what really happens, what really gets us into trouble is all of a sudden people become angry, not just a few. Oh, and we have some things that happen with the Supreme Court that's got some people really stirred up about stuff. So now they're emotionally charged, and the
Hmm.
price of gas is going up, and they can't get their favorite food in the store or whatever it is, or the restaurant is short because there's some of the restaurants are like, that's not on our menu today because the truck hasn't come in.
Hmm.
And so you get this angst that builds up.
Hmm.
And then people decide, we have a kind of a natural tendency to want to blame somebody for this stuff. And
Right.
so it's their fault. So now then people want to burn down City Hall like it's going to help. And they'll go riot someplace like that's going to help. And so things start to break down. And that's where my concern is. Again, I don't want to be negative about it, but the reality is people could get ugly, and we could lose a lot of services for a period of time. And when people then decide to take matters into their own hands, it could go bad.
Hmm.
That's my concern. And I
You-
don't want that to happen. But my motivation is about families, about individuals, and it's about helping people understand.
mhm.
I've seen people suffer. I've seen people, I haven't been around people when they've frozen to death, but I've studied their cases. And then also when people died from hyperthermia, hypothermia, both of them being too hot, too cold. And so I started wanting to understand answers to it
Mhm.
and just started teaching more and more. Most of my classes through the years have been free and just to come to the classes. In fact, most of my classes I do online now, they're free. I
Mhm.
do have a paid library where I have some of the very in-depth classes to try and cover the expenses of what I'm doing. So we charge $5.99 a month to have access to that library. But I have dozens of classes that are for
That's on your
free.
website.
That's on my website. Yes, you can go there and register. So that's how I'm I this is for me, but I want to teach and share
Mhm.
and the things that I've learned. And then how I got into all the areas that I teach is that it all started out in cold weather, but well, when you're talking about cold weather in winter, you're talking about nutrition that you need to have the right nutrition, not what you're being taught normally, but the true nutrition, Arctic nutrition, Eskimo nutrition. And then, well, there's also hydration and water. So that comes up. Well, now you have to be sure you have good water. And then there's the sanitation issues. Then there's all kinds of things from building fires and saying, well, all this stuff. And so I started moving out into other areas and I was going to other people's classes all the time because I don't have all the answers and I want to know what they're teaching. And some of them had some very valuable information, but most of them were like, yeah, that's good. That's true. I know that, but what about and what if? And sometimes I'd ask questions and they didn't have answers. Other times, I just knew that wasn't the full story, so I needed to go find out why.
Mhm.
I want to understand, and then I can
Mhm.
teach. It's a passion with me to do that.
It sounds like you have researched the critical topics pretty well in depth.
I won't teach something I haven't done or that I don't understand as deeply as I can understand it. Doesn't mean, but I'm not going to talk about something that I only know as a theory.
Bad. How bad do you think it's ever going to get?
Loaded question. And here again, for a guy that doesn't want to be a gloom and doom kind of a guy, but the reality is for myself and what I would suggest that people think in terms of preparing of I want to be ready to deal with total economic, social collapse breakdown. Now, that'll scare some people off, but again, if I'm prepared for the worst, then no matter what happens, there'll be an adventure. And then I'm going to do as much work as I can to prevent that from occurring any way that I can. And part of the way you do that is the more people that are prepared to deal with these situations, the less likely it is to happen because there's part of that human factor that when it starts to go and it looks like it's about to go and everybody rushes to the store. Remember the toilet paper shortage of a year and a half ago?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my heck, that was hilarious. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I went into Winco, it's one of the places, big box store. Went into Winco. Every shopping, they have hundreds of shopping carts. Every shopping cart was in the store with somebody behind it, and their baskets were piled high. Yes, toilet paper and anything else they could get. And I went there to take pictures. I didn't go to buy anything. I'm not going to stand in that 2 hour line because I didn't need to buy toilet paper. I had toilet paper and other things, but you couldn't find macaroni and cheese. You couldn't anything that was quick fix. It was gone. It was stripped empty.
Mm-hmm.
And when here's the mentality that occurs when you go into a store and you see a couple aisles where part of the sections are empty, and you were going to buy that. Well, the idea, well, I'm going to buy something while I'm in here. So you go down to the next section, you strip that one out. So they were stripping that store of stuff. Not, and some of those people were buying things they probably didn't normally eat or use. They were
Mm-hmm.
buying it because it was there. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's an emergency hoarding mentality. That's what we want to prevent. Because if you're making provisions where you're storing and buying things and learning all along the way, then the supply chain will adapt to that because it isn't a sudden shock. We were never short of enough toilet paper to take care of everybody's hiney in this country. We never ran out of it
Right.
at truth. What we had was a delivery shock problem because people were stripping the stores and then people were buying more in panic
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't get it, so they needed to get it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a process you need to get engaged in now. and keep it up steadily and as much as you can do, because whenever something happens, you'll be exactly where you are, not where you wish you were, not where you were going to be, not when you were going to make the next trip to the store. You'll be right there right now. And that's what you want to be prepared to deal with. So how bad could it get? Well, I'm preparing as though the worst case scenario is going to hit. And I'm not wasting any money because I'm buying things I'm going to use anyway. I'm learning skills that I'm going to use sometime. I'm having fun doing it. It's an adventure. So for me, it's like, hey, this is pretty cool. I can do this and I don't have to fret if and when something happens.
I'm imagining that no matter what the trigger is, there's several events that could end up in a complete economic collapse.
Right.
But anyway, that's the worst that we can imagine. There's going to be people listening to this program who say, well, that'll never happen here. What do you want to tell them?
They have to be right. They have no choice but to be right.
Okay.
Now that's like, well, no, it can't happen, so I don't have to worry about that.
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well,
they believe it won't happen, so why prepare? Why worry?
Right. Well, and that's, I'm going to say that's okay. I'm not here to shame somebody or tell them you're a bad person because you don't believe in these things. That's not what I'm about. Mine is more of an invitation that if you're even considering there's a remotest possibility that some bad things really could happen and maybe they would get worse and worse and worse because you have this perfect storm, if you can even entertain for a moment the possibility of that occurring, then don't reject that idea. Let's learn to do something about it. Let me and other people teach you what you can do to be ready so that you will not have to run around with your hair on fire and depend on somebody to take care of you. Here's one of these other things that I believe is a truism I teach people is the more dependent you are on whatever it is from outside of you, the more dependent you are, the more at risk you are. Mm-hmm. You see, now let me take a case right now, and this is kind of serious, and so this may hit a little close to home for some people. Let's say that you have a family member or yourself that is only able to breathe and stay alive because you have an oxygen concentrator. Because if the oxygen concentration gets too low, you pass out. And I've been to where I've been short on oxygen because of some things, and it doesn't feel good. And you can't take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you or somebody is in that position, then you have to recognize that electricity for you is a matter of life and death. Mm-hmm. You have to have electricity to keep going. Now, also realizing on the spiritual side and just being kind of bottom line blunt, we're all going to die sometime, and it'll come to a point where my life will end. I just don't want to volunteer for it to end any sooner than it has to. And I don't like suffering. I've tried a lot of suffering. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And so I want things to go as well as it can, but one of these days it will be over. And when it's over, it's okay because mm-hmm. it is going to end. But one of the ways of looking at it is, well, if you're saying it can't happen, then you have to be prepared and ready to deal with the fact that you're going to watch your children, grandchildren, spouse, neighbors die of starvation or of disease mm-hmm. or anything like that because you're not prepared, they're not prepared. And so you're going to have to let that happen. And then hopefully you have the moral center and the spiritual courage to simply say, well, I'm not going to go steal from somebody else so that I can take care of me, and that's going to put them in a worse condition. You hopefully you have that moral center to say, well, I've chosen to not worry about these things, then don't worry about them, but then have the moral courage and the stamina to simply say, I'm going to get what I deserve. That's a bottom line. And it's okay. And by the way, if you go that way and that happens, you will be blessed in the long run. If you want to think of it in eternal terms on that, where you have not now broken down your standards and you're willing to rob, steal, whatever it is, kill, just to preserve your life. You will be blessed. So it's okay. Just be sure you're ready to deal with the consequences. That's all I can say.
Why would people listen to what you have to say?
Yeah, maybe I take a little different approach. I hope that I do. My interest is not to just talk about what's coming or gloom and doom, although I'll talk about very serious topics. I mean, I have no problem just getting right down to it, but if I know who the audience is, because you can talk about some things that are really ugly and people that are sitting on the fence go like, I don't want to go there, that's scary. And I don't want to do that
Hmm.
because I want people to think about, stuff happens. Maybe one of the reasons why people would listen is I'm an old buzzard. I'm just a shy of 75. I've been involved in this thing we might call preparedness or emergency readiness or those things. The new word is prepping. I'd like to call it Provident Living, and I've been doing that formally since 1972, where I was doing it as really as something we were doing for our family, and then in 1984 it became my profession. That's just really what I've done almost continuously, although I've had some jobs along the way because you do need to earn a living occasionally. I want to find out how and why things work. My background is science and technology, as going through engineering school and then into the Navy and nuclear power and a number of things. I've been around and I've had other technical jobs. I like answers. I want to understand. And the way I like to call it is that I don't teach a recipe or a cookbook. I want to understand the principles that are involved so I can share the principles of how you do it. And I liken it to this cookbook thing. Any cook can pick up a cookbook, look at a recipe, and just follow the list of things and how you put them together. But a master chef, like on some of the cooking shows, you can just give them a basket of all kinds of weird things and they'll make a meal out of it because they
Hmm.
understand how things fit together. So I want to teach people principles so they will understand, not just give them a list of when this happens, do this, because that ultimately doesn't work.
Right. Or I've heard you say, relative to the list, some people just make a list of things you ought to buy.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I hear some people have said in some of my classes, which is just give me the list. Just tell me what to buy. I just want to know what to buy. And my reply is, well, if I just tell you what to buy when it gets really tough, you'll probably just give up and die because you don't know what to do. See, the stuff is important. We need the material things, but you have to have the understanding. And one of the other things that's critically important is your outlook, your attitude, your belief system.
Hmm.
Because when you lose your head, when you lose your heart, when you say I don't know what to do, I guess I'll die. Well, you probably will. Is the bottom line. You want to have a feeling that so long as I have breath, I'm okay. It may hurt, it may be uncomfortable, I may even be afraid, but so long as I'm alive, I can still take action.
Hmm.
And I want to do the next best thing that I can. And that's part of what I want to do is to inspire people to think that way. But you best do that if you know how and why things work, what your true needs and priorities are, and then how things physically work around you, and also how your mental processes work, so that you can make decisions and just keep moving forward no matter what's going on around you.